So we will just start as it is from scratch. Very, very simply, hello and welcome to WarrenThornton.com. I am here as usual on a Tuesday night with a wonderful James Tweedy. Good evening, James. How the devil are you?
Good, thanks, Warren. How are you?
Not so bad. Bit flustered because we couldn't get the opening credits coming up for the show, but we will press on regardless. And the very first thing we're sort of going to be pressing on with is the nonsense that is coming out of Pokrovsk and Ukraine. Now, we have a very, very exclusive reveal later on in the show. We can't do it in the first half of the show because obviously we'll get booted off the internet for doing it. But we are certain of our facts and we're going to be showing you absolutely everything to do with it a bit later on. But let's get into Pokrovsk and the current dreadful situation that is going on the front line, James. The Zelensky's come out and said all sorts of crazy things, as he always does. And we're hearing all sorts of, should we say, drama coming out of these areas. But the problem that we have, James, is Pokrovsk is in imminent danger of going down. They don't have much to be able to stop this happening with. We are talking about a big cauldron of people who are trapped in one area. There are Ukrainian and SBU units that are now being thrown into the Pokrovsk region to try and, shall we say, stem the flow that is going on. There are many, many soldiers trapped there. We've heard from one Merc who has escaped there in the last week. How bad do you think it is going to get, James?
Well, they're fighting in the middle of the city, and then I don't want to jump the gun on what you're going to report, but one report is that the Russian army has taken a village or a town to the north of there, which sits on one of the last roads that's open, or the last road that's open. And so they're going to have trouble getting people in and getting supplies in and then getting people out. God knows what's happening to the wounded.
Yeah, the wounded have sort of been left to sort of fend for themselves. The problem is Mark Breckle wants a quick word. Mark?
I believe Rivne is probably the last chance of them getting out there. Is that correct, Warren?
Yeah, it was the last chance.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was the last chance. Bless them. Because, of course, everybody was sort of saying, oh, this is going to be, it's not going to be that bad. Well, it is that bad now because obviously the crossroads is under very, very heavy and drone fire. We'll try and get the main map up for you so you can have a look. Because it is staggering just how bad it is. And of course, they're trying to play this down. So let's get the map up so that everybody can see it, which is the best way for you to be able to see. Now, this is Rivne. This is what everybody was talking about. And of course, as you can see, they've gone in. They're right into Minorad as well. We've got a little bit of updated maps there. They are across the railway line in many directions now. In Pokrovsk, which is this area here. So they are now into this area as well. And they're looking to push on almost past the people in the sort of eastern portion of Pokrovsk, James Tweedy, and trying to cut them off literally. They've got this road here, this crossroads here, just outside of Rivne, was where all those vehicles got absolutely smashed to bits. And we showed a video of that,
Right.
The best reports we have is that we've got 7,000 or 8,000 trapped inside Pokrovsk, and they're trying to make their way out. We're hearing that one of the commanders has actually asked for permission, who doesn't get on with Sersky, has asked for permission to either surrender or retreat, and retreat his men out of there because he wants to save his men. He's actually quite a good commander. Who's on the spot there. Of course, him and Sersky don't get on. It's highly likely that Sersky's going to tell them to stay there. And there's also another 3,000 or 4,000 Ukrainians in Minorad, which is just the little town over. What's your assessment here, James?
Well, I mean, the numbers seem quite high because, you know, I think 30,000 people lived there before the war, you know, and now there's a lot of the buildings are going to be ruined, and you know, are they all sleeping, one in every bedroom in every home in what's left of the city that they hold? I don't know about that. There may be parts of units, you know. I mean, a Ukrainian infantry battalion, you know, might not be, you know, people might assume it's 500 men or something. There may be, you know, like 200 frontline troops or something, and there may be.
Yes.
So, you know, who knows how many troops are actually there, but they've got a problem, and it's obviously the wrong time to be sending more troops in.
Yeah.
But the reason it's being done, I guess it's being done for political reasons, because Volodymyr Zelensky's just had a whole round of meetings, firstly with Donald Trump and then with all the European NATO members in London, hosted by Keir Starmer, chaired by Keir Starmer even. And, you know, and he's trying to drum up support for, you know, get more arms, get more sanctions on Russia and so forth. And he doesn't want to tell them that they're losing the war, does he? You know, they say, oh, we're still holding on in Pokrovsk after months and months and months. But yeah, if you look at that map, what that's telling you is it's not good. And the fighting is already in the city, and they're being cleared out of the city bit by bit.
Yeah.
And the only way out for them appears to be across fields,
open ground,
farmers' fields. So in the open, and you're getting shelled and attacked by drones and things like that. So it's you know, it is a bit of a trap for them. And they haven't been able to defend their flanks. The Russians have taken that town to the north, Radinsky.
Yes.
And so that's cut off another road. So why would you keep? It's like the Battle of Stalingrad. Why would you keep defending it? You know,
Yes.
It's not even like in Stalingrad. The envelopment, you know, when they were surrounded, that came as a surprise to the Germans.
It did.
And the other Axis powers. You know, the Russians managed to keep that operation quiet, but here it's been going on in slow motion for months and months, and they're still in there. You know, and if they're sending more units in, that's very foolish.
Well, I've got a little prediction here, and of course, I think Mark Breckle's probably going to go mildly potty at me. But they're trying to get. I've got the feeling here, and I'm one of these, when it's completely and utterly cleared, when there's nobody else left in it, you know, when there's none of the enemy at all, anywhere in the town, on the outskirts, then it's yours. Okay. The Financial Times is trying to get out ahead of this by saying it will have fallen by mid-November, and there we're going. There's their prediction. Of course, they've got they're nowhere near Dobrophilia or anything else. And the Financial Times, for me, is trying to get out ahead of this by saying, look, it's going to completely fall by mid-November. I don't think it'll be completely clear until around Christmas, because it is one of these, having to dig them out of the high rises, having to dig them out of any mines or outskirts or anything like that. And it always takes a while with the mopping up. Are they doing this and saying, look, it's going to be over by mid-November? Because I've got it totally wrong, and this is absolutely the case. Or is it going to be the fact that they go, well, they're still holding on, and they had a timeline to clear it by mid-November. They've completely failed in their objective. Is that coming? Can you see that, James, or not?
There'll be various things done to try and downplay it. You know, they'll say, "Oh, the Ukrainians just made an orderly retreat or whatever."
It's not important.
Yeah, it's not an important place. That's what, you know. That's why the Ukrainians sent so many units in there. I mean, according to the Russian reports, there's something like 8 or 10 brigades, or parts of them anyway.
Yes.
Elements of about 8 or 10 brigades fighting around there. And all these sort of things, and then they'll say that they killed 10 times as many Russians as
yes,
as
10 billion Russians will have died in taking the place. Yeah,
yeah, and all that sort of thing. So you get all of that, but you know, there is no deadline on anything. if you see what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no great rush to grab territory before a ceasefire because there's no ceasefire agreed. There's no armistice agreed. There's no sort of deadline for the end of the war.
No.
You know, there aren't talks going on, and the two sides can't reach agreement on
Never gonna reach
discussed
agreement
in
in
the
a million
talks,
years.
right?
Yeah.
But so
it-
then it will continue. The war will continue, and then if things get worse for Ukraine, maybe Ukraine will do something. There's all sorts of there's all sorts of things you can say about that politically. I mean, the way that Donald Trump has sort of treated this, sort of flip flopping back and forth and stuff.
Yeah.
He's getting himself into a situation where he's now backing Ukraine. He's increasing the sanctions on Russia, and he's promising them more weapons or something, or hinting at more weapons. And then it becomes, so then he's betting on Ukraine. That's what he's doing. He's betting on Ukraine. And there's a problem with that, because if Ukraine loses badly somewhere, or if the Ukrainian army just sort of collapses, at some undetermined point in the future, then it becomes very humiliating for him. And then that's dangerous. That's the Russians were trying to, at times have tried to avoid that. They want to let the US and NATO save face.
Yes.
But there's another sort of argument in Russia, because this is being discussed in public, that they need to humiliate NATO in Ukraine. They need to really inflict a big defeat on NATO's biggest proxy in Ukraine, as a humiliation to them, and destroy as much NATO equipment as possible that's been supplied to Ukraine, as well as a sort of adding insult to injury. And so maybe it's going that way.
Yeah, you could be right. Mark Breckle, do you think I'm wrong, or do you think the Financial Times is right?
Well, Financial Times wouldn't really listen to it anyway because it's English. Sorry.
Yeah.
But like I say, right at the very beginning, I was told 30 days. They've near enough finished in less than 2 weeks.
Yes.
So, but like you say, Warren, until officially the Russian government tell you that it's all over, that's usually the best. But the other thing is, the sanctions thing is nonsense. There's more people buying Russian oil than ever before. I was listening to a guy who's saying all the different countries, and it's nonsense. But the other thing I wanted to mention as well, where Udachin is, where that mine is, was it worth it?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, but
Keeping that mine, and they've lost it.
The amount that have died because of that is quite incredible. Quite incredible. And it's the same in, should we say, in Kupiansk. We've got a major problem there as well. That's pretty much become a bottleneck now. Once Kupiansk has fallen, and we're hearing, as I say, we've heard from a couple of mercenary soldiers. One one who is a British guy who's contacted us and told us that in Kupiansk the conditions, James, are absolutely terrible. People are stuck on the right-hand side of Kupiansk once again, and it always seems that the Russians go down the western side of a town or a city, and that leaves them nowhere to run but east, which is straight into the arms of the Russians normally, or try and make it out by going north. But he said that he got out over a week ago. The defenders in Kupiansk are cold. They've got almost no food, no water. They've got very little shelter. They're under constant shelling. There's almost nothing going back the other way, and the morale is absolutely in the toilet. And they've got conscripts who are next to useless.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was an unusually detailed report from the daily report from the Russian Ministry of Defense today, and it said it had a few things to say about Kupiansk, and one was that troops that were trapped, like you say, on the east side of the river there,
Yes.
tried to escape on boats, like 6 boats.
Yeah.
And they basically, they saw them and they sunk the boats. I don't know what happened to the guys in them, but so yeah, that was.
Yes.
So they're stuck. They can't get across. The bridges are either destroyed or the Russians control them. That's the point. So they are stuck.
This is a weird thing, James, because we heard this from the Ukrainian propaganda machine, which is all over social media, that the bridges were being destroyed to stop the Russians getting across. What they were actually hiding was the fact that the Russians are blowing up these bridges to keep them in, to stop them from getting away. That's even more. How can I put it? That's very chilling, isn't it? When your enemy are trying to stop you from even leaving, and of course. We've seen this before. Remember, we spoke to a Merc who was in Kursk, who was very, very lucky to get out. He made a breakout with 9 other guys, and only 2 or 3 of them actually made it out of Kursk. This is pretty much going to be the same thing when it collapses, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's they've been, they destroy those bridges to near the front to stop the Ukrainians supplying their own troops.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians are mining the bridges, and sometimes you see, there's a couple of videos out there over the last few months of a Russian drone, little quadcopter drone with a anti-tank grenade warhead on it, flying in and hitting the explosive charge that they put on the, on the leg of the bridge. And blowing it up and like destroying the bridge, thanks to thanks to the helpful Ukrainian army putting the explosives there in the first place. But they are stuck. I mean, yeah, they are stuck, and it's very strange that even as the Russian army was advanced across the river already, was advancing around the west side of Kupiansk from the north, and then into Kupiansk, and capturing half of Kupiansk, that they still did not evacuate those troops, and so they've got, why have they done that? Why have they left them there? Is it so that they can just sort of point at a map and say, look, we still hold this. We still hold this part of Kharkov, like whatever, it's part of Kharkov anyway. It's not even part of Lugansk. We've still got a bridgehead on the other side of the river. No, you don't. You're stuck.
Yes, we've got a bridgehead. No, you're actually in a bottleneck. Mark Breckle.
There's another place I'm looking forward to when they get to that. A place called Shevchenkov.
Oh, yes.
Very, very famous because the Russians lost that in 22. Once they get there, they're very close to Kharkov. I'm definitely getting the Russian flags out when they get near there.
Let's get into this then, because when we're talking about let's deal with Pokrovsk first, then we'll deal obviously with the situation that then arises for Kramatorsk and also for Slavyansk. We've dealt with Kupiansk, and we know that they're going to try and possibly move across to Kharkiv, with Sumy as well involved in that. And that's sort of like the northern pincer, if you like. We've also got Liman, which is under siege at the moment, and Siversk, which are very much under siege. But to deal with Pokrovsk, first of all, when that falls, they can't possibly turn around and go, oh, it's perfectly okay. This isn't an important town. I mean, when they get past there, and they push north a little bit, suddenly they're through the bulk of all these unbelievable trench lines that they've had, which have been it's an absolute morass of trench lines. And they're through, and there's almost nothing then, James, that gets in the way.
Yeah, I mean, this is the issue. They take that they can expand quickly and take a lot more territory. And then if Kramatorsk, no, it's not Kramatorsk, it's there's a town called Constantinople, a city called Constantinople that's further
Yes.
west, which is east, sorry, which is even more it's also half encircled basically, and it's in danger. So that's suddenly going to find itself in between two huge pincers. And then there's Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, the last two big cities in Donetsk north of there, right? And that's the target. But yeah, so then if you start seeing these rapid advances, this is going to look very bad for Ukraine.
Yes, Constantinople is not looking good. There's people up north, and there's people down south as well that are going into various areas. But I just wanted to show everybody, because people will sort of turn around and go, well, how bad can it get, and how much is it going to affect when that place falls? Well, when it does fall, James, of course, once they punch beyond that trench line, and everybody goes, oh, the Russians haven't done this and the Russians haven't done that. Well, they haven't needed to, first of all, because the Ukrainians have just been wandering towards them like some sort of crazy lemmings. And secondly, I don't think people fully understand of just how thick these trench lines are. Now, this is the map of them in yellow. And it's a whole network that's been across the entire Donbass that they've made. And when you see, once they punch through, and here's Dobrofilia here, Pokrovsk down the bottom, Konstantinivka, and then Kramatorsk up the top. But once they punch through this last line of very heavily fortified trench lines, James, there's almost nothing stopping them going almost straight to Pavlograd, which is on the way to to Dnipro, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's exactly, and then there's a similar situation in the south of the country, where they broke through in a place called Ugledar that was kind of like the linchpin. It was like the corner of two front lines, running down from the north and one running across to the west.
Yeah.
They took Ugledar, and now they've taken a great big rectangle of territory there, and that puts them north of the main Ukrainian front lines, and they're just pushing along and rolling the whole thing up to the city of Zaporozhye. And that's and then that's another disaster, a political disaster, let's say, for Zelensky if Zaporozhye is surrounded, or if it's captured, So then he can't claim that he's still winning the war at that point.
No, and I don't think you could ever turn around and say that he ever was he? That's the problem that we've got. And of course, we're going to get more and more. Mark Breckle?
Yeah, when you're talking about Zaporizhia, the most popular at the moment, which is going to be Yancho River, Huliapol, which is pronounced Guliapol. They're getting very close to that. That's a big place in the Zaporizhia, and Stepnahurst. Once those two go, that'll be a Zaporizhia will be falling quite easily, because after that it's only small villages. After that, they're the biggest towns in that area.
Yeah, as you can see here, so you've got Pokrovsk here. Once that's done, then we've got the E50 road. Now there's a few little places along there, but then the next big place we come to is Pavlograd. There isn't much in the way stopping them. There's a lot of open fields. We'll zoom in a little bit because obviously, let's go in the wrong way there. We'll zoom in a little bit because there are villages and stuff like that in the way. But essentially, there's not a lot to stop that. And then, of course, if they reach the Dnieper, then there really is. I mean, it's absolute catastrophe time, isn't it, James?
There's, the momentum is on the Russian side.
Yeah.
And there is a long-term trend of, they're capturing towns and villages and things. Pretty much every day now you see one or more. Yeah, they're announcing that they've captured one or more, from the Russian Ministry of Defense. And then you've got the whole thing, this trend that you see where the Ukrainian army there's photographic and video evidence that they've lost a lot of equipment, more than half of what they started with and more than half of what they've received in many cases. Certainly the most important equipment, more than half of it. And so they're running out of equipment, and they've supposedly expanded their army with dozens of new brigades and so on. Right?
Well,
but what are they armed with? Probably nothing. And
this
so
is the area.
everything is it's kind of a very brittle, large army, but actually it looks good, impressive on paper, but it's probably quite brittle. And if the momentum speeds up a bit too much, and there's too much demoralization, and the Ukrainian army is forced to start mounting very large scale retreats, then it might just, there's a danger for them. I'm not going to predict anything, but there is a danger for the Ukrainians that it will become chaotic and it will fall apart, you know, and then they'll start losing, they'll start losing very large parts of territory and places, regions that Russia wasn't really in before, like they might lose Kharkov, or they might lose the Dnipropetrovsk region up to the river at least.
Yes, exactly.
And so then, and then what do they do? Then they've got to sit, and then of course they have to sit down and talk peace because they're losing the war, and the terms of the talks are going to be
going to get harsher. Yeah,
exactly. It's going to be like, okay, well, the Russians have already taken everything that they want or they claim, and now it's a question of whether they're going to keep Kharkov or whether they're going to trade it back in return to Ukraine in return for some other thing, which might be something that Russia wants from the US and not from Ukraine at all,
Yeah, and of course, as Christopher Walken once said in the film True Romance, when he was quizzing Dennis Hopper, and Dennis Hopper got a smack in the nose. Christopher Walken turned around and said, "That's about the best you're going to get, and you're never going to get that. It's never going to get that good again." Which is pretty much where the situation that Ukraine are in. Mark Breckle, before we go on.
Yeah, well, what I've heard is what you normally say, Warren. It's Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, up to the borders of Kryvyi, and then down into Odessa. I've not heard anything past Dnipropetrovsk at the moment. Zaporizhia is a definite, like you say, and Odessa negotiate. But I've not heard anything
into Odessa.
Yeah, I've not heard anything past that. But what I have heard is them thinking of moving a lot of the population from the east past Kiev.
Yes.
So that's the only thing I've heard. It's like a bit like an ethnic cleansing. So that's the only thing. They're going to starve them, keep them cold, and have no electricity at the moment.
Well, it'll be one of those, won't it? They'll just execute the ones who want to stay behind, like they have been doing. Here's where this is the area when I showed you that map with all the little blue squares on. This is where the Ukrainians are trying to get in, James. These various relief columns. But here's the thing that is really, really interesting, and I wanted to tackle this with you because the Azov brigades that were told to go and do this relief literally refused. And it's conscripts that are being thrown into the front to try and reach their comrades in Krovsk, and are getting blown apart on the way. It's said that they're getting 3 out of every 10 are only making it through. And of course, there are many brigades which aren't, shall we say, in the best of health, James Tweedy, all around Krishny, which is just here.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the Azov brigade has always seemed to be a law unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
That and the Idar brigade and can't remember them. There's a funny name of a unit that was formed out of the right sector organization. But they're all political organizations, basically.
They're all neo-Nazis, basically.
Yeah, and they were all brought into the Ukrainian armed forces.
Yes.
First into the National Guard, which is separate from the army, and then into the army. Since 2014, and they basically, I mean, they do act like a law unto themselves, and the only time they were really sort of in the thick of it was early on in
Yes.
the city down in the south. What's it called? Begins with an M, Mariupol, where a lot of them were taken prisoner, but they sort of managed to reconstitute the brigades after that.
Yes, they were in a mine, weren't they? They were in the mine
it was a great big steel works.
There was,
and underneath they had very deep. It was built in the Soviet era, and after the Second World War, they built very deep fallout shelters under them.
They did.
The workers would be able to survive.
And they had to send the Chechens in to dig them out.
So I mean, I think they came out. I think they just surrendered because basically they were stuck
Starving
and there
to
was nothing. There was no way out. But
they
and so they get special treatment, and they're always the first ones to be swapped. In a prisoner swap and things like that. And they probably don't. They're probably thinking, well, we don't want to go and get killed, because we don't want to get killed. But also they want to be like the last units, like still intact at the end of the war, so they can take over in Kiev.
Yes,
and kill Zelensky or something like
that. Well, the moment he makes peace, they'll find him dangling from the yard arm. Mark Breckle, before we carry on, Mark.
Again, there were quite a few English people that went fighting down in Mariupol.
Yes, stupidly.
Yes, and they didn't last very long.
One of those. Stay your ass home. You haven't got a clue what you're doing. Mark is absolutely right on that point. So let's go forward then. By Christmas, Pokrovska's fallen. Minorad has fallen. We know that they're going down, no matter what the idiots, and the unicorns all say. Then we come to Konstantinivka, and of course, by Christmas, Konstantinivka might well be in all sorts of trouble. And this sort of area here, this conurbation, this general area, so they'll literally pull that up, so it's all nice and level, which is what the Russians tend to do. Tend to make a cauldron. Then once they've emptied everybody in it or captured that area, they then tend to flatten the line or straighten the line, I should say. And then we come to Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, don't we? Because that is the big prize, isn't it? Slavyansk, I would imagine, would be first. Kramatorsk is bigger, and it's more. But there is a question of terrain, isn't there, as well, with Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. What are your thoughts, James?
There's generally a lot of valleys and hills around there. It looks like farmland on the map, but there are high and low places. The rail lines and the major roads tend to follow the high ground. If you look to the east of there, there's a town called Seversk, which has been sort of on the front line for years, for a couple of years now. And it's in a kind of encirclement, and it got quite, it's in trouble now because the Russians captured the forest, which is a nature reserve, by the way, to the north of there.
Yeah,
and that was full of trenches and dugouts and things.
It was.
Ukrainians really heavily fortified that over about 2.5 years, and now they've lost it all, and then Seversk is in trouble. There's something to the north of there that looks like a quarry, by the way.
Yes.
You can see that. That might be the only thing that's kind of keeping it
there'll be that quarry there. Yeah.
So anyway, so then that's that. So that will go as well, basically, and then if the Russians capture Lyman, or Krasny Lyman, as they call it, Krasny means red. So the Ukrainians changed it by taking out the red word from it. And then, so then you've got Seversk becomes untenable, and then you're into the siege of Slavyansk.
Yes. Yeah.
Whenever that happens, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to predict when that's going to happen, but
I am. I'm going to predict that Slavyansk and Kramatorsk will be under siege by August. Mark Breckle.
Tversky Donbass Channel. That's famous because they stopped the water there and so the people of the Donbass couldn't get any water. But there is a place as well that you've not mentioned, Warren, and it's Izium. That's
No,
very
it's
famous.
just up here. I was just about to come to that.
Yeah, sorry, Warren.
That's all right. Because Izium, of course, is the next big area, and that is a place that the Russians would very much like to have back in their hands, Mark.
Yeah, and if you remember, there was war crimes in Izium.
There were.
Accused twice, and the Russians didn't do it. There was a lot of dead bodies near a church, if I remember rightly.
Yes,
and the hands was tied together, and they were put on carts.
They were. It wasn't good at all. The James Tweedy, I've sort of said that round about August. I mean, we've also got the situation, of course, further up the road. Of course, you've got Kharkiv here, which of course once the fall of Kupiansk, which is here, then of course they're on their way towards Kharkiv then, and there isn't a great deal again in the way to stop that. Obviously, they'll try and hold them up here if they can, using this ground to try and stop them.
There's a place where your pointer really, your cursor is, that's called Chuguyev or Chuhuyev, which is a city. So that city sort of, very early on in the war, in the first few days, there was a rumor that it had basically surrendered. But I think the mayor had sort of declared it an open city. He wasn't going to have any fighting over the city.
Pick either side, yeah. But the trouble is with that is you don't get a choice, do you? Because they'll kill you. It's just simple as that.
Yeah.
And then of course we've got the sort of big prize which everybody will be talking about, which is Sumy. And of course, people get very, very worried about Sumy because of its proximity to Kiev, which is across there. So all in all, James, I think it's round about August when we start looking with the current death rate, and today confirmed from our Ukraine sources, 1,435 dead. From our Russian sources, they're claiming 1,477 dead Ukrainian soldiers. It's around about 1,500 a day, James. At that rate, round about August, they'll only have 400,000 left, and they won't be able to mount a decent defence of half the places that they're in now. I mean, can you see it? Can you see it at some stage? I mean, I've always maintained that they're going to take the 9 oblasts, and I don't see any reason to change that, James.
I don't know. I think it's a political question.
I mean, this is me here, James. I'm going a cut-off line across here. The 7 oblasts plus Odessa and Crimea.
I mean, okay. There's a point that the Ukrainian army is Ukraine can't really grow its armed forces, and even like trying to keep them at the current size, you're going to have units that don't have very little heavy equipment like tanks and artillery and things like that you need, and so it's going to become more and more difficult for them to fight, and Russia may be able to put more troops.
Oh, we've lost you, James.
Have you? Okay. Can you hear me?
On video. We've lost you on video.
I don't know why that happens. It drops out.
Right.
Yeah. So Russia might still be able to increase the number of troops it has on the front, and basically put pressure somewhere else, and so on. And Russia is able to re-equip its units to replace losses. So it's getting more and more difficult. Okay. Now the question of whether, I said this before, Russia probably doesn't want to annex the whole of Ukraine. They would probably rather, they're probably wary of very crazy people in some of the countries, in the Western countries, especially the US, reacting very badly to the humiliation of losing the war to Russia, which they say is an inferior country, the country that can't stand up to the USA at all, right? a country that they call a petrol station, a gas station with nuclear weapons.
Yes.
And so, and they might launch their nuclear weapons or something like that, because that's the only thing they can do. They can't really intervene on the ground because they can't just project the force there, And so, but also what they want really is they don't necessarily want land. They want Ukraine to declare neutrality and to get rid of that, to renounce its attempts to join NATO, which is going to mean changing their constitution, because for some reason they wrote that into their constitution.
Yes.
And it's going to mean also Ukraine commits to all sorts of other things, like not repressing people who don't speak Ukrainian, including people who speak Russian but other languages, and lifting the bans on various political parties which are banned, and various newspapers and TV channels which are under government control now. But it also means that NATO is going to have to make a deal, and they're going to, and the US especially, and they're going to have to pull some of their bases out of Eastern Europe. You see, that's what they want. Those are the things that they want. They're not particularly interested in whether Kharkov is part of Russia or not part of Russia. I don't think that's secondary. If it happens, if the Ukrainian army collapses and then they just march into Kharkov without, too much trouble, and then the people there say, hooray, here come the Russians. We're all Russian speaking too. We want to be part of Russia. They might have a referendum on that or something. But, if, next week Zelensky agrees to meet Putin and he says, yeah, I agree, we're not going to join NATO and we're going to be neutral and blah, 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 that's not going to happen.
No.
Basically.
No, I don't think so either. Mark Breckle, and then we'll have Louis Bastos. Mark Breckle first.
Right, this is where I'm going to disagree with both of you. Because Kharkov is traditionally Russian. It's Russian speaking. I've listened to the accents. Now, my prediction has always been different to Warren's. I think Lviv up to Kiev will be a republic. And south of that will be where Odessa is, where Vinnytsia is. That's the border. Will stay Russian. South of that, and the Sumy Chernihiv will be Russian. And I think Putin will go into Kiev. I've always thought that, because that's denazification.
Yeah.
When he once said that, he said that all the time, denazification. And it's traditionally, because Kiev was once built by Stalin. He made Kiev the city it is today. So that's my prediction. I'll always stick with that. I know you'll always say the 9 oblasts, including Crimea. But we'll never know until next year.
No, I suppose we won't. Louis Bastos. Louis?
Hi, Maureen. Good morning. Здравствуйте, James. Question for James. You think that Russia is doing the same thing as Eritrea did to Ethiopia, block off the sea completely in the Red Sea? That is my first question. And the second statement, I agree with the statement that Kharkov was once a capital. So, and that is very Russian orientated. In the revolution, they shot the mayor of Kharkov, and he had to go in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. My question was, is that what Russia wants to do, to cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea, as Eritrea did to Ethiopia in the Red Sea? Thank you.
There is a kind of, I think there's a political current in Russia that wants Odessa back as part of Russia, as it was historically, long time, and that would mean also having the part of Kherson region, Oblast, which is on the west side of the Dnieper River, and then in between them there's Nikolaev, right? So the city of Nikolaev and the region of Nikolaev. And that would also give them a land bridge to Transnistria, which is this very long, thin region of Moldova, where in 1991 they decided they didn't want to, they were also Russians and they didn't want to be part of this new country, Moldova, and so on. So and then there are Russian peacekeeping troops there, and it's all a very kind of tense situation. So they would like to basically be able to have a land route just to keep it supplied, and stop anyone from messing around with it, basically. And there's all that, and that's been under discussion for years and years, really. And Odessa is where there was a protest against the Maidan Square coup back in 2014, and then they were attacked by neo-Nazis, and people were killed in the trade union house that was burnt down, and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
Now, if they want that, does that idea of them wanting that, now, does that mean it would, if they had that, if they took all that territory, then it would give them the ability, to cut Ukraine off from the sea. But
because Odessa
would they
Odessa
would
was
they
a Jewish.
do that? I don't know if they would actually do that as a matter of, like from the outset or whatever. It might be something that they could threaten Ukraine with if Ukraine didn't behave or whatever. Ukraine backtracked on the peace deal. But I think that they would probably allow Ukrainian ships to pass down the Dnieper River and out into the sea for trade, and for ships to go the other way. And they possibly wouldn't, and they might not charge them any money even, or tariffs on what they're carrying, because it's not going to Russian ports. I think that they would probably be reasonable about that with Ukraine. To be honest, that's what I think.
Thank you, John.
If Ukraine started backtracking, like I say, on the peace deal, then that might change. They might blockade it.
Okay. Mark Breckle, very quickly.
Right.
You're welcome.
For start off, Odessa is Russian. It's in stone because of Catherine the Great. But the other thing is, going to the Jewish, the Rothschilds mansion is in Odessa. And that was the only reason the Rothschilds left that mansion, because of the Germans, because they were Jews. The other thing that is questionable, though, is Kirovoy Rog and Kryvyi Rih. And Kirovoy Rog has got links to Zelensky's father.
Yeah,
that's the only ones I've been to Kirovoy Rog, so that's the only ones I'm up in the air about them two, Warren.
I am very much along the lines of sticking exactly with what I turned around and said at the very beginning, that they would very simply Odessa, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, and then they will make up near Sumy and Cherniv, they will make a what they could basically an exclusion zone for putting any military equipment in. If you stick any military equipment in there, then all bets are off and we're going to hit you again. I cannot see them changing that, but we will wait and see. So there's three different opinions there. One of them you can choose yourself. Now, let's get on to something that is very, very important here, and very, very much something that I've sort of looked at and got a real problem for. We've got Zelensky once again begging, almost literally, hands up for a ceasefire. James Tweedy, of course, he desperately wants a ceasefire. Everybody else is pushing like crazy. Lavrov has come out and said, unless Russia gets certain guarantees now, there's no point in meeting the Americans whatsoever. Your thoughts on this before I show you one final picture on this?
Well, look, okay, there has to be like an agenda, a framework for peace talks. It's not, the meeting in Alaska was a breakthrough because Russian and Ukraine and US leaders hadn't met since, for a very long time, for years. I'm not sure if Biden met Putin when he was president, but Trump met Putin once when he was president,
Yeah.
So that was a breakthrough, and there seemed to be agreement on some things, superficially, although we don't really know. But yeah, so they need to have something to talk about at the next meeting. That's for sure. And that's what they've always been. That's what they've been saying consistently for the last few months about a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Zelensky has gone from saying that he won't even. He signed a decree saying that no one in Ukraine could even talk to the Russians until Vladimir Putin was replaced as president.
Yep.
To now demanding that Putin meet with him. And then, but what's the meeting going to achieve if Zelensky says, no, I don't agree to any of your demands or any of your terms, and Putin says, well, I don't agree to any of yours either. So, they have to have something that's on the table for them to sign, basically.
So I'm gonna make a prediction here, because I've got a photograph, and in diplomatic terms, this speaks absolute volumes, and it's everything you need to know about. As I'm predicting, everything you need to know in diplomatic terms. If you've been around a few diplomats, this is the coldest handshake in the world, and I'll tell you for why. They're not even bothering to look at each other. There's no warmth. There's no what you might call even passing of a greeting. It's a perfunctory, I must do the handshake. That's all I will do. Let's have a chat some stage, and this, that, and the other. When we know that Rubio now scuppered the chances of Budapest, you can see between them here, there's no warmth, there's no trust, there's no nothing, James Twitty.
Okay, I mean, Lavrov probably knows who Marco Rubio is, because Marco Rubio has been a senator for a very long time before he became Secretary of State, Foreign Minister. And then he's, and then he has a certain kind of politics, and it's coming through. So let's say what's happening with Venezuela, he wants to see a lot of governments overthrown in Latin America. So he's not necessarily a very useful guy, or he's not someone that say Russia can see eye to eye with on a lot of things. And then
I think he's the most dangerous man. I think he's the most dangerous man in America, to be honest with you, James Tweedy.
I don't know about that. I think there's limits. He's got his limitations. But Lavrov has been Russian foreign minister for a long time, and he remembers all the stuff that happened before. Like, for instance, when Barack Obama was president, and Lavrov would meet John Kerry, who was the second Secretary of State under Obama, and he was having meetings with him around like 2014, 2015, 2016, and they were discussing. They would agree. They would talk about things. They would reach some kind of agreement, and then Kerry would go back to the USA, go back to Washington D.C., and then publicly say something completely different. And this was extremely frustrating for the Russians. And they're getting the same thing now. There'll be meetings, there'll be lots of fine words spoken and things, and then suddenly everything will change. Donald Trump will start talking about giving Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, and then he won't give them, but then he'll put sanctions, and the sanctions are announced by the Treasury Secretary, which is not even like the Chancellor of the Exchequer here, to be honest. It's the Treasury Secretary's only job seems to be putting sanctions on things. They don't get to set the budget properly. And so they, it's like it just comes out of the blue from the Treasury Secretary's office without Trump saying anything about it. So then they can't, it's like it's not nothing to do with Trump when it is, let's say. So so they can't trust the USA. The USA is not able to make an agreement. Basically, they can't make a deal.
No, I'm gonna make you a prediction.
So that's why he's that's why he's frustrated.
So I'm going to make you a prediction here. Marco Rubio is the next president of the United States, and then we're all in awful trouble. Mark Brackle.
Yeah, you're right there. Definitely that prediction. Anyway, but the thing is, though, Lavrov is a very, very intelligent man.
He is.
He's lived, and so is Putin. Putin can remember history right back to 1945. So there's no trust with the West.
No.
But the thing is, though, with Putin, he likes Ukraine. He thinks the Ukrainians are part of Russia, the same people. So that is the main thing. But there's definitely no trust between in the West, and I don't think that trust will ever come back myself.
It'll take a long time, that's for sure. Right, we need to get a bit of a move on here. Let's get into this next of all, because this is quite. We are going to go through everything. Shall we do with Ukraine to do with this? This is a couple of members of VELT that had a bit of a close shave. James Tweedy.
Fuck. Let's go. Your life. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go. To three line. Fuck. Ibra. Let's go. Ты живой? Ваня. Нога. Давай, на плечо, залазь. На плечо залазь, на плечо. Пошли. Блять. Идем. Давай.
So they went out with one of the mobile drone operating groups or mobile artillery groups and nearly got blown up. These were two reporters from obviously from DeVelt. A bit of a dangerous occupation going out anywhere near the front line, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the modern battlefield is like an incredibly dangerous place, and you need to have electronic drone jammers with you, and you need to have like special capes that hide your infrared signature, from your body heat or whatever, just to move around without getting shot, and then there's snipers out there and everything. So it is very dangerous.
Apart from,
that's a horrific war.
Apart from James Tweedy, these people.
У вас призовного віку?
Всі не тут, скажу так.
Не тут?
Ні. Не тут, тому що небезпека.
Чи думали ви про те, щоб хтось з них, чи можливо вони виявляли бажання, долучився до лав Збройних сил?
Двоє з моїх синів народилися не в Україні. Один з них має громадянство Сполучених Штатів Америки, він американець. Другий багато років живе в Америці. Вони обидва живуть в Америці. Третій син, він хвора дитина просто.
А що з ним?
Зараз я без його відома цього казати не можу.
Це молодший?
Яка різниця? Хвора дитина. Я не можу про це казати.
Ви просто ніколи про це не говорили.
Я ж кажу, хвора дитина. Я про це не можу казати, це його біль, це його хвороба.
So there we are. The Creedence Clearwater Revival once did a song called Fortunate Son, where of course poor kids get sent to the front line, and the politicians' sons, they get away with it because they're born elsewhere. Klitschko's children were all born at Mount Sinai Hospital. None of the rich kids are going to the front line. None of the politicians' children are going to the front line. That's a disgrace, isn't it, James?
Well, I mean, I don't blame them, but the whole thing is very cynical, and it's. I mean, in a way, it's gone beyond that. The way that people have been grabbed off the street, the way that elderly men are are being conscripted, all these sort of things, and the fact that even if you're ill, he said his son is not healthy, but there are people who say that there was a guy who said that he was partially sighted and he couldn't read.
Yeah.
They made him do an eye test and he couldn't see the chart.
So
So
they still sent him.
the recruiting sergeant read it out for him, or did the test for him, basically. Read the answers out for him. They put him in and he's now a prisoner of war. But so that's the really crazy thing. It's gone beyond the rich
Yes,
keeping their kids outside the country or whatever.
it has. Mark Breckle.
Again, there was a guy in Kharkiv. They mobilised him and they took his dog as well.
They did, which is not good, of course. But none of these people ever go anywhere near the front. These are NATO's top boys who do fundraising for the Azov battalion. Of course, these people never seem to volunteer to go anywhere near the top line, near the front line, because they're too busy raising funds and going on social media. Here he is.
You know what, Russia? We so have had it with your ridiculous attacks, with your bloodthirst.
These people go quite crazy, and of course, how can I put it? There are many of these that are out there on social media. But there is, how can I put it? When you talk about NATO and these people who fundraise for Azov, we're now going to get into what is going to be our reveal, and we were triggered by this photograph into having a bit of a deeper look. James Tweedy, have you any idea who